What if the most dangerous weapon in America's arsenal isn't a missile, a drone, or a secret war plan, but a single phrase? For generations, our military called it service members, soldiers, defenders, guardians of the nation. Now, a new term is creeping into speeches and training manuals: warrior ethos. It sounds noble, but some warn it's quietly reshaping our armed forces and even our police into something more aggressive, more willing to dominate than defend. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur isn't letting it slide, and her challenge to the Pentagon uncovers a much bigger problem that stretches from our factory floors to the front lines of Ukraine.
Welcome our guests. I come from a family of combat veterans going back a long time. And my comment is the use of certain words and what they imply. When I hear warrior ethos, and I hear it a lot from you, Mr. Secretary, I'm concerned. All the soldiers in our family, all of whom fought and received medals for their combat service, call themselves soldiers. Marines are trained to kill. In terms of domestic policing, our police and our National Guard at the state level, carefully used, but also our state police are used in civil enforcement, and they are good. I don't need any reply. I just am concerned about what those words you often utter actually do in people's minds and change the language we have used since the founding of this republic. So that is a concern of mine. I wanted to go to the General and Chairman, if I could. We've heard a lot this morning about defense industrial base. And this is something I ran for office on a long time ago. We have not made significant progress as a country in this regard. And the places that made things, whether they were machine tools, whether it was composite materials, were left behind. It's one of the reasons for the division in our society. So I am very interested in knowing what specifically and in which accounts, and I hope you can get this back to us within a week and a half, you are going to focus on in order to inject additional resources in the defense industrial base of this country. What will that look like? We are just successful now in helping steel to revive and some of our composite metals. 40 years ago, I wrote a title to the defense bill dealing with strategic metals. Nobody at Department of Defense cared, okay? So I'm interested in which accounts, if you could kindly get back to me on that, and when you say defense industrial base, budget-wise, in which accounts, what does that mean? All right, I don't expect you to answer it now. Can you tell me when you might get that information back to us?
Well, ma'am, you just said a week and a half, so I know the awesome humans behind me are scribbling madly to come back to that. Can I just make a quick comment? You know, I happen to be a lucky guy that served in the private sector for a while, and I ran a machine shop in Texas along with a metal finishing business. So when we talk about defense industrial base, I broaden that out to really the national industrial base. There are certain components that are made in the defense side, but as you articulate, ma'am, many others are made in the small machine shops out around this entire nation. When I talk about mobilizing our nation, I think of that national, not just defense industrial base. What do we have to do to create greater capacity all the way down the chain to include jobs at the local level for those people that build quality parts and deliver on time with shorter lead time and lower cost? And so I have great empathy for what you're talking about, and we'll get back to you just as soon as we can.
Yes, and General and Secretary, going back to the drone attack in Ukraine, a country that was invaded by the Russian dictatorship, starting in 2014. They've been at war for a decade, more than a decade. What they've done with drones is astounding. It's going to change warfare. One of my questions is, what are you doing to establish relations with Ukraine and not turn your back on them as an administration and help them win, help liberty win? This has implications way beyond the boundaries of Ukraine. Russia's got 11 time zones. I mean, this is the most important test of liberty for our NATO alliance in my lifetime, and we better help win. And that involves moving forward faster on drone technology. I'm very worried about our air bases. where we have secure assets, Mr. Secretary, can we defend them today if they were to have a similar attack?
We're certainly very focused on that, ma'am. And we're learning every day from Ukraine. I think we would need to clarify what win means. This president is committed to peace. He's committed to stopping the killing. And he was not in office when it started in 2014. There were no additional incursions in his first term. And then under the previous administration, Vladimir Putin sought to take Ukraine. We're committed. This administration's committed to peace, to stopping the killing, and we think that serves
Did you just
American
leave
interests.
Ukraine, Mr. Secretary? Did you just leave Ukraine?
Young lady's time's expired, but if you can get
I did
back
not leave Ukraine.
to us on that.
No,
that
Have
would
you
be great.
visited Ukraine?
No, ma'am.
My first trip
No.
there, sir, was 1973.
Young lady's
I yield back.
time has expired. Mr. Carter, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
For your service to our country. We're very proud of you. I'm fully supportive of the Army's outgoing modernization efforts and the recent Army Transformation Initiative that combined the Army's Future Command with TRADOC to become the Transformational and Training Command. How are you?
Kaptur's concern comes from a deeply personal place. She grew up in a family of combat veterans, people who had served, fought, and earned medals for their sacrifices. They never called themselves warriors, they were soldiers. That difference isn't just about word choice, it's about identity. Soldiers defend, protect, and uphold. Warriors in the popular imagination are trained to kill, conquer, and seek combat. For her, hearing this term repeatedly from the Secretary of Defense raises a red flag. In her view, the language we use doesn't just describe reality, it shapes it. And in this case, it risks normalizing a culture of aggression over a culture of service. She draws a parallel to domestic law enforcement. Our police, our National Guard at the state level, and even our state police have historically been careful in their use of force. Their role in civil enforcement was about control, order, and safety, not combat. But what happens when that same warrior ethos starts creeping into their training and identity? The danger, she warns, is that protectors begin to see themselves as combatants and communities begin to feel like battlefields. That shift doesn't happen overnight, but once the language changes, the mission can follow. Kaptur isn't stopping at the philosophical debate over military culture. She's connecting it to something much bigger, the way unchecked militarism abroad can bleed into authoritarianism at home. If the U.S. starts seeing every challenge, foreign or domestic, as a battle to be fought by warriors, we risk building a security apparatus that's more eager to dominate than to defend. And this, she argues, is happening at the same time America's defense capabilities are hollowing out from within. That's where she pivots to the defense industrial base. This isn't just a buzzword, it's the backbone of America's ability to build, repair, and sustain the tools of defense. Decades ago, the U.S. led the world in manufacturing the machine tools, composite materials, and strategic metals that keep military readiness more than just a slogan. But in her view, complacency has allowed those industries to wither. Towns that once built critical components have been left behind, and the expertise that took generations to build is disappearing. She's blunt: you can't claim to be ready for conflict if you're depending on fragile foreign supply chains to make the very parts you need. Her challenge to Secretary Hegseth is pointed. She wants specifics: which budget accounts will get resources to rebuild this capacity? What's the timeline? What's the actual plan to ensure the U.S. can sustain advanced weapons programs without scrambling for parts from overseas? For Kaptur, this isn't about another round of patriotic speeches, it's about strategic reindustrialization. Without it, all the talk of military modernization is just air. The Secretary responds by broadening the discussion to the national industrial base, noting that many of the parts and materials needed for defense are made in small machine shops across the country. These aren't massive defense contractors, they're local businesses turning out precision components with shorter lead times and lower costs. Kaptur seizes on this point because it underscores her argument. Strengthening local manufacturing isn't just economic policy, it's national security doctrine. In a world where adversaries like China are building capacity at breakneck speed, the ability to surge production domestically could decide whether the U.S. can respond to a crisis without begging foreign suppliers. From there, Kaptur shifts to a modern battlefield thousands of miles away, Ukraine. She notes that the country has been at war since 2014, facing relentless aggression from Russia. In that time, Ukraine has transformed drone warfare from a niche capability into a central decisive weapon. Cheap, adaptable, and fast, drones have altered the balance of power on the battlefield. For Kaptur, this isn't just about supporting an ally, it's about recognizing that the US and NATO are already in a technological arms race with Moscow. She presses the secretary, what is the US doing to deepen cooperation with Ukraine and accelerate its own drone development? Are we moving quickly enough to adapt to this new form of warfare, or are we falling back into the habit of reacting too slowly while adversaries innovate? Her message is clear: in this kind of war, hesitation is just another word for defeat. Ukraine's ability to master drones not only blunts Russia's advances but also strengthens NATO's eastern defenses without the cost and time required for traditional military buildups. But here's where the conversation hits a wall. When she asks the secretary to define what winning in Ukraine actually means, the answer doesn't come. Instead, she hears familiar rhetoric about peace, stopping the killing, and the administration's commitments. Kaptur isn't satisfied, because for her, clarity on the endgame is essential. Without it, policies drift, resources scatter, and conflicts risk becoming endless. That moment exposes the deeper divide between her vision and his. For Kaptur, the focus should be on concrete outcomes: a re-industrialized America, a military identity rooted in defense rather than perpetual combat, and a strategy in Ukraine that has a clear finish line. For Hegseth, the emphasis is on modernization, on leaning into a warrior ethos that he believes prepares the military for the threats of the future. It's more than a disagreement over tactics, it's a clash of philosophies. One side warns against letting the language of war seep too deeply into every part of national life, reshaping the culture into something unrecognizable. The other embraces a combat-ready identity as the foundation of readiness. Both claim to be working towards security, but the paths they see are moving in different directions. In the end, Kaptur's questions tie together three threads: the culture we instill in those who serve, the capacity we have to arm and sustain them, and the clarity with which we define victory. Change the culture without strengthening the base, and you risk hollowing out the force. Build capacity without a clear mission, and you risk endless spending with no resolution. And wage war without defining victory, and you risk fighting forever. So what do you think? Is America on the right track, or is it time to reset the way we think about our military, our industry, and our role in the world? Drop your thoughts below, and if you found this eye-opening, hit subscribe. The next one dives into an even more controversial battle playing out behind the scenes.